For-profit corporate leaders. Group members include Matthew Collado, Sadia Nemencheko, Angelique Reed, and Stephen Singh. The leaders that we chose during our presentation is Alex Skorsky, Gail Boudreau, and Michael Dowling. We hope you enjoy. Thank you.
Alex Skorsky is a well-known name throughout the healthcare industry. His reputation goes back to 1988 when he began as a sales rep for Johnson & Johnson. The timeline represents some major breaking points throughout his career. In 2001, he was appointed president of the company. However, in 2004, he left Johnson & Johnson to become head of Novartis Corporation. This change didn't last too long as he came back to Johnson & Johnson in 2012 and became CEO. Just a few short years after being CEO, he was awarded with the Katka Humanitarian Award of the Year, as well as the Joseph Warren Leadership Award. He was since successful running Johnson & Johnson, helping it to become the popular household brand that it is. Alex is a strong leader who has a passion to ensure all employees are treated equally, and his history shows a long-running support for employee diversity in the workforce, as well as working to ensure employee morale is always the best that it can be. His leadership style shows compassion and understanding for his employees, and teamwork is very important to him. As we all know, 2020 brought the COVID pandemic that caused a wave of change throughout the healthcare industry. His company would go on to be the first company who successfully created a single-shot dose COVID-19 vaccine. Although the vaccine itself has had some backlash, it is generally widely accepted, with the pros far outweighing the cons according to the nation's greatest health leaders. The following is a CNBC exclusive interview with Alex Skorsky. It's a good way to gauge his passion for work as well as his ideas regarding corporate diversity. He highlights underlying issues throughout the workforce, such as inequality and racism. Throughout the video, he explains how important diversity is to his company and how it will continue to be a priority. The way he speaks about the current ongoing issues throughout the video that are currently affecting the nation will help you get an idea on the type of leader that he is.
Becky, I think, underlying all this, many of these issues are connected. As we've seen issues obviously play out with the coronavirus over the past several months, and then you put the compounding effect of some of the recent instances of racism and injustice, you put that together, and it just really, I think, has created a cauldron and has exposed underlying issues in our country that are very important for us to address. I know, for me personally and across our company, while we've been having discussions for a decade about diversity and inclusion and making sure that we're doing our role, not only with our employees, but our communities, and frankly, having been in my role over 8 years and with the company for more than 30, the tone and the tenor of the conversation as of late, I think, has definitely reached a new level. I mean, like many CEOs have been commenting over the past few days, I've tried to be as connected as I could with the company and frankly on the phone over the weekend with employees, and to hear some of their stories, especially as of late, from one of our most senior Black leaders who have gone to some of the most esteemed schools, serve their country, have significant positions of responsibility, telling stories about frankly being concerned over the last few weeks whether their son or daughter could go jogging in their neighborhood without them following behind in a car, hit me certainly like frankly a punch in the stomach. And I think it just represents how all these things coming together right now. It's a critical time for our country. It's a critical time, I think, for business to also be speaking out, speaking up about these issues.
Hey, Alex, I want to focus on what you all are doing at Johnson & Johnson to try and do more than just talk about this, too, because it's one thing to have an open and honest and frank dialogue. It's another to actually put your money where your mouth is. Let's talk about some of the things that you all have done and what your workforce looks like at this point. Talk us through where you've actually kind of put your money where your mouth is on this.
Sure, Becky. Well, I think the way you introduced it is spot on, and that I think it needs to be a combination of what are you doing with your heart, so to speak, and what are you doing with your head. And what I mean by that is, in my discussions with many of our leaders and frankly, just people in industry that I've been connecting with, I think mission number one needs to be, frankly, creating an understanding of the way these events, as of late, have landed on the Black community, and again, in a very personal way, and making sure in many cases, particularly somebody like me as a white male, that we're doing more listening. And I realize that can be difficult, but I think there's no way that you can just move through a checklist without, I think, demonstrating empathy and an understanding of some of the deep-seated nature and experiences that the community has had and that they're currently experiencing. But I think just listening alone, as you said, isn't enough. And just as in business, when we take on any issue, there should be a plan, there should be objectives, there should be accountabilities, responsibilities. And so that's what we try to do at Johnson & Johnson. And it starts by having all of our leaders do a Credo dialogue. And just yesterday, in fact, we had hundreds of these around Johnson & Johnson involving more than thousands of employees, where we talk and we want to create a safe space where employees can bring their authentic selves, have a discussion, and frankly have the freedom that they think is necessary to hopefully create a better understanding. But at the same time, we also introduced several, we think, important steps to make sure that we've got actions aligned behind these values. And things like making sure that, in our case, as the world's largest healthcare products company, we know that COVID-19 has had a significantly disproportionate effect on the Black community and on minority communities. And so we want to go out and we want to find out, why is that? What's the underlying nature? What can we do better to make sure that your zip code isn't making or contributing more to your life expectancy, frankly, than other healthcare factors? And so we're committing more than $50 million. We just recently added 10 more to that to say, what can we be doing in these areas to understand that fact better? We're working with all of our suppliers, and we work with more than 3,000 suppliers around the world. And we're trying to use our size for good and say, what are you doing in some of these areas around diversity and inclusion? How can we share best practices with many of them? And then, of course, the other thing that we're doing that we're very pleased that we announced, we're going to be working with the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And they've got some wonderful programs regarding the history of racism and injustice, and how do we build on some of these, on an iconic institution. And we're going to be doing more than $10 million over the next 3 years to try, not only within Johnson & Johnson, but more broadly in communities, to frankly have these discussions and come to a better understanding.
The leader I will talk about is Gail Boudreaux. Gail Boudreaux is currently the CEO of the Aetna, the largest health insurance company in the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association. Gail played basketball for Dartmouth and was their leading rebounder and scorer. Her playing days at the Dartmouth first taught her the concept of team, something she would look back at as CEO. Before joining Aetna, Gail was CEO at United Healthcare, led the largest division of United Health Group. There she was responsible for managing $120 billion worth of revenue. She also managed over 60,000 employees. In 2018, she was awarded the Billie Jean King Contribution Award. Gail likes to innovate and create, in order to stay ahead of the competition and to improve health plan member experience. She does it by making large investments into technology and IT professionals to build and maintain this technology. In 2019, the company launched a benefits manager, Ingenio RX, which had 81.4% year-over-year growth in the fourth quarter of 2020. In 2020, Gail was listed number 10 on the Forbes list, the 100 most powerful women. Gail preferred the middle-of-the-road approach, one which balances the importance of work needing to get done while at the same time maintain good morale. Gail is a very team-oriented leader. She believes that all members have an important role in making the team successful and believes that any member who does not do their part should be removed. Gail Boudreaux is a very open-minded leader who loves to face challenges head-on. One such challenge was presented to her during her first job as professional basketball player. She traveled to France to play for a French basketball team, where all her teammates spoke only French. Gail, however, was able to overcome the language barrier and survive. Gail possesses strong problem-solving skills, as was shown by her involvement in fixing failing companies and projects. Gail is a conceptual leader who puts a great emphasis on strategic planning. I consider Gail to be both an authentic and transformational leader. What makes Gail an authentic leader is her belief in staying true to herself and staying close to the business in order to make an honest evaluation. Gail creates relationships with customers as well as frontline employees. What makes her a transformational leader is her desire to constantly evolve in order to meet customer demand. She refers to herself as being restless, someone who always tries to come up with new ideas to help her customers. Gail encourages her employees to learn new skills because everything is moving quickly, and she wants to stay ahead of the curve. Gail is also considered to be a trendsetter in the healthcare industry. She is one of the first in the industry to advance digital technology and modernize the healthcare space to improve user experience. In conclusion, Gail is one of the most successful leaders in healthcare industry, whose leadership style should be studied by the future aspiring healthcare executives.
My first full-time professional job was as a professional basketball player in Versailles, France. And without speaking the language, got on a plane, moved there for a year, and joined a team that all spoke only French. What I learned from that was you can kind of do anything if you're willing to be open-minded and take a challenge. I'm restless about the future. I'm always thinking about the things that we can be doing, where we can improve. How do we transform ourselves? And I think that restlessness is a really important part of senior leadership in any company. We're in an industry that's going through dramatic transformation, but ultimately you need to transform and you need to move even faster. Information is so much more ubiquitous. Digital is transforming all of our industries, and skill sets are changing very quickly for people who work in our company, but also consumers who have much greater demands on the type of information that they want. Part of my early career, probably for the first 10 years, I was pretty much working on problems. I was working on businesses that were underperforming or projects that had not gotten well. And so the lesson for me in all of that was there's always another move. There's always something you can do, and there's always something you can learn and lean into challenges. I love the opportunity to set strategy, lead a company, build teams, define a culture, and I feel really strongly about you have to be yourself, no matter what your challenges are, the opportunities that you take. I also think it's really important never to lose sight of what got you to the position. And so part of my leadership is I spend a lot of time with our customers in the field, talking to our frontline associates. And over the years, that has been incredibly valuable to me. You get great feedback. And it keeps you connected and close to the business. So this combination, I think, of really setting the right mission, vision, and values, authentic leadership, and then staying close to the business so that you can really be authentic, honestly, in your leadership and the goals you set and what you ask people to do. And that's how I think about what has defined my career.
Who is Michael Dowling? He is one of healthcare's most influential voices. Michael Dowling published The Rags to Riches Story of His Life and His Journey in 2020. As a disadvantaged youth, his realization of power of education and his eventual departure from his home to attend a university in Cork and onward through his life, he gradually improves himself and his circumstances as a president and CEO of current Northwell Health. He leads a clinical, academic, and a research enterprise with a workforce of over 75,000 strong and an annual revenue of $14 billion. Northwell Health is the largest healthcare provider and private employer in New York State, where we care for more than 2 million people annually through a vast network of more than 830 outpatient facilities, including 220 primary care practices, 52 urgent care centers, and home care rehabilitation, and end-of-life programs, and including 23 hospitals. Mr. Dowling received his undergrad degree from the University of College of Cork, UCC, in Ireland, and then obtained his master's degree from Fordham University here in New York. He also has an honorary doctorate from the Queen's University in Belfast and the University College of Dublin of Hofstra University and Dowling College. Mr. Dowling, his leadership style is defined as transformational. He exclaimed he's not like a coach. He likes to involve a lot of people. He truly is people and employee-centric. And as a leader, he spends an extraordinary amount of time with employees at the front line and across the organization. Mr. Dowling, I have the pleasure of personally knowing as an employee of almost 7 years at Northwell Health. One of the moments that I personally must say that I recall meeting Mr. Dowling was at my employee orientation. Employee orientation is where every employee of Northwell must sit through an orientation regarding Northwell. You learn about the organization, you learn about human resources, and everything from soup to nuts. One interesting thing about the employee orientation is that Mr. Dowling has never missed a meeting. In all of the years that he has been in his role, he has attended each and every one of them. I find that remarkable because I say to myself, a CEO attends every employee orientation, but it's true. That told me that he is willing to take the time out of his busy schedule to welcome each and every one of us that comes through that door as a new employee, made me know that this was the place that I needed to be. Mr. Dowling, his weakness is that he is aggressive. He's aggressive at taking risks. And the risk that he's aggressive at is to catapult the organization always forward. Many see that as positive. However, for employees, they're expected to continue to foster innovation. At Northwell, we have an innovation center where employees are encouraged to bring the ideas. The ideas can be anything from a day-to-day request for productivity improvement or something that you think will help a patient. Those ideas are then backed by Northwell and funded and trademarked, not only with the employee's name, but also with Northwell. Tell me if that's not something that you cannot get behind and believe in yourself about. I don't know what will be. So one interesting fact about Mr. Dowling is that each year he asks himself 10 questions. The 10 questions are to the right and goes such like this. How would I rate the past year? Are we continuing to transform, or are we beginning to get a little complacent? And we being the health system. Am I still highly passionate about the job? Is my management team still a team? Am I clear about the goals and strategies from the short and the long term? Am I connecting with frontline staff? Am I communicating well? Am I helping others around me grow? Am I keeping my ego in check? Am I ensuring the organization will be relevant for future generations? Mr. Dowling is known as a transformational leader. Transformational leadership falls into the 4 I's, which is idolized influence, intellectual stimulation, inspirational motivation, and individualized consideration. Under the category of idolized influences, Mr. Dowling as a leader is deeply respected by his team due to the example that he sets for others. Behind this, he provides a clear vision and a sense of belonging, which encourages individuals to buy into long-term objectives of the organization, and it drives each and every one of us to achieve our own goals. Under the category of intellectual stimulation, Mr. Dowling creates a diverse and open environment, which he encourages others to innovate and to form new ideas for the organization and themselves. He pushes us to seek paths to goals, which sometimes we may stray from the norm. However, openly push others to challenge their own beliefs and values, as well as challenge the company themselves. Under inspirational motivation, Mr. Dowling plays an important role in improving performance by working to raise the team's morale through motivational techniques and acting as an inspiration for the followers. Under the category of individualized consideration, Mr. Dowling actively works to create a diverse environment and a supportive environment where individual differences are constantly respected and celebrated. Employees know that Mr. Dowling will always happily listen to any concerns or needs that they may have. Mr. Dowling himself acts as a mentor each year to 75 employees that are handpicked. He works with each of them to develop, empower, and inspire them to achieve to be more. This individual effort is key to achieving the best result in creating the future leaders of Northwell Health. Here, we have 2 videos, CEO Unplugged. The video to the left is a casual meeting with a YouTube star that portrays Mr. Dowling in a more relaxed environment, where you get to know a little bit more about who he is and his story. And the video to the right is the 3rd annual ZARB Leadership Series that's held every year at Hofstra. Please take a look. Give me your feedback. Let me know what you think. I appreciate your time and getting to know my transformational leader, Michael Dowling. Here, we have 2 videos, CEO Unplugged.
CEO
The video
Michael
to the
Dowling
left
on
is
CEO
a
Unplugged.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted.
Casual meeting with a YouTube star that portrays Mr. Dowling in a more relaxed environment where you get to know a little bit more about who he is and his story. And the video to the right is the third annual ZARB Leadership Series that's held every year at Hofstra. Please take a look. Give me your feedback. Let me know what you think. I appreciate your time and getting to know my transformational leader, Michael Dowling.
Good to be here. Thank you for asking me to join you.
No, I like the fact that you told me this is one of your nicest studios.
It actually is one of the nicest studios. I mean, the nicest studios and actually the nicest people.
Oh, thank you. Very
Wonderful, thank
sweet.
you.
Well, I did a little bit of research on you before you came. So before we start talking
Sure.
about everything serious, I found out that, first of all, you were born in Limerick, Ireland, right? And in your house, you have a replica cottage that you built of where, you, like, it looks like the house you grew up in.
Yes, I grew up in a rural area in West Limerick,
Yeah.
which is in the southwest of Ireland. And I grew up in a house, a little different than what most people think, because it was the 50s.
Okay.
Late 40s, 50s, 60s. And the house I grew up in was a house with a mud floor, mud walls, thatch roof, no electricity, no bathrooms, no heat.
Whoa.
And, not even an outhouse.
Oh, my goodness.
So, and the house fell down on us one night when we were in a storm. Things were different back then.
Yeah.
We didn't. Years later, I decided that I wanted to build a house so I would never forget. So I built a model of the house with all the rooms, all the furniture, just looking like the way I remembered it, and I have it at home.
That's
All three leaders mentioned above can be heralded as transformational, authentic, and servant leaders. Gail Boudreaux, Michael Dowling, and Alex Gorksky fit into the transformational category because of the selfless work they continue to do for their organizations. These individuals have proven to be leaders who engage with others to create connections that raise the level of motivation and morality in both the leader and the follower. Gorski, Bordeaux, and Dowling are attentive to the needs and motives of their followers and try their best to guide their followers to their fullest potential. The transformational trait of a leader ties well with their authenticity. This perspective outlines authentic leadership as relational, created by leaders and followers together. In Gorski's summary, it was mentioned that he's open and willing to hear from his employees and constantly encourages his employees to challenge the status quo. Likewise, Dowling spends an extraordinary amount of time with employees on the front line and specifically attends all the new hire seminars monthly. Boudreaux follows the same trend in that she values the human skill trait more than the technical skill. We're going to get into that a little bit later when we talk about the 3 skill factor approach. Boudreaux's emphasis on support and team concept shows her caring, team-first mentality. Boudreaux is able to bring this type of thinking together with compassion for the individuals at the other end of the claim in order to provide better results for everyone. The final similarity between these leaders is that they are all subservient or servant leaders. According to Nordhaus, they characterizes the servant leadership as a natural feeling that one wants to serve. All 3 leaders have shown that they are natural leaders who find it in their duty to serve their followers. For instance, Gorski shows significant commitment to the growth of his people, as he is known to encourage his employees to self-care and develop themselves first. Likewise, as mentioned earlier in the summary for Boudreaux, Boudreaux is the type of leader who tries to personally help all members of her team become better, knowing that the better each team member becomes, the better the team will become overall.
Dowling displays servant leadership because of the conceptualization trait, which is defined as an individual's ability to be a visionary for an organization, providing a clear sense of its goals and direction. This is clear because Dowling made a clear distinction between management and leadership, as mentioned in one of his quotes where he said, "I like to see myself more on the leadership scale, which is the ability to try to figure out how to see the future and then trying to figure out how to navigate it." How are these leaders different? After a careful analysis of the three leaders above, they were very similar, primarily because of the industry they actually operate in. However, I did notice that Johnson & Johnson CEO Alex Gorsky has a military background. And in an interview with Fortune magazine in 2017, he mentioned that it was really important for him to look at things realistically and assess them and take the reins to motivate his followers. In contrast, Dowling, CEO of Northwell Health, is more of a coach, one who likes to involve lots of people. It could be argued that the CEO of Johnson & Johnson leans towards autocracy, while Dowling, the CEO of Northwell Health, takes a more democratic approach. And just the final difference that I noticed between the two men and the one lady that we analyzed was that Boudreaux came up as she's passed through the entire healthcare system, right? She started healthcare, she's been in healthcare, very similar to the others. But a lot of where she learned her leadership was through sports, right? Like it mentioned earlier in her history, Boudreaux is actually a very well accomplished athlete, winning many awards and going into almost at a professional level. And she has mentioned it herself many times that, if it wasn't for sports, she probably wouldn't be the type of leader she would be today. Now I will go into traits, styles, and competencies to wrap up this presentation. So as a group, we broke it down into the different leadership styles, traits, and competencies that are required to be an effective leader. From our understanding, an effective leader is authentic, they're transformational, and they're servant leader. And just a quick overview of them. The authentic leadership is an approach in leadership that emphasizes building the leader's legitimacy through honest relationship with followers, and who value their input and are built on an ethical foundation. In the world of servant leadership, values are very important. And servant leaders can achieve power because of their ideals and their ethics. And then finally, I think the most important one is transformational leadership, right? And so transformational leadership, transformational leaders tend to motivate and teach with a shared vision of the future. They communicate well, they inspire their group because they expect the best from everyone and hold themselves accountable as well. Transformation leaders usually exhibit the following leadership traits. I know there's a lot of leadership traits on this slide, and I'm not going to go into it all in the interest of time. And I'm just going to probably hit on a couple of the top ones that we think are very important. Drive. Leaders tend to be highly motivated individuals by definition. And the inner drive is reflected in a number of common ways. They reflect a greater effort level in general. They strive for achievement. They have greater ambition, and they work with greater energy. They're often tenacious, and they are more likely to take the initiative rather than wait for someone else to do so. And the next one is a desire to lead, right? As a leader, effective leaders tend to have a strong desire toward leadership. Leadership is something that you need to want to do. And these leaders that we reviewed and we analyzed earlier, it's something that they want to do. They've grown up doing it. They like it. And they want to take charge. And then the final one under the leadership traits section, it's honesty and integrity, right? I think honesty is the best policy. And it's the moral aspect of leadership is highly significant. And effective leaders must demonstrate high levels of honesty and integrity, because this is essential to inspiring confidence and trust from your followers, from employees. Without these things, we don't think that a leader can be very effective. All right, and then finally, on the competency side, right? So there's a 3-skill approach, right, which is argued as that effective leadership requires 3 skills, and these are technical, human, and conceptual skills. Now, technical skills refer to proficiency in a specific activity or type of work. Human skills refer to being able to work with people, and conceptual skills refer to the ability to work with broad concepts and ideas. The 3-skill approach asserted that while all skills were important for leaders, their level of importance varies depending on the organizational level of leaders. As leaders move through the levels of the organization from lower to upper, skill importance moves from technical to human to conceptual. So overall, after doing the presentation, right, we found that leadership is really hard to define, and what it means and even harder is what it means to be a successful leader. In today's complicated and ever-transforming world, is not the same as it was decades ago. Success in leadership today has moved away from the authoritative and the heroic styles of the past years. In today's environment, where the workforce is constructed of teams of diverse, multi-generational, and often global employees, leaders must understand how to influence, inspire, and coach their co-workers to push their potential while meeting both the individual and the organization's needs. Leaders must be authentic, compassionate, moral, and modest servants to their followers who understand the benefits of mentoring their employees to become better selves. Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, please post them in the voice thread or leave us a comment. Thank you and enjoy the summer.